Okay, and now I'll just ask Norman Hill if he will present, or at least, yes, present in absentia our Crappies.
Good evening, everyone. We now come to the presentation of the Crappie Awards. These awards are presented to governments, corporations, and individuals whose behavior is so contrary to the public interest that they simply must be singled out for ridicule and condemnation. This year we have two winners, one a government and the other a corporation. This year's winners present an interesting case because although we're awarding them each a Crappie for their evil deeds, you could easily argue that they should receive a single joint award, so intimately connected are they. Unfortunately, this sort of overly close relationship between an elected government and a private corporation seems to have become the norm in government business relations. This is a point that we strive to make through the Crappie Awards. We cannot have meaningful democracy when governments are so closely connected with the industry that they put corporate interests ahead of the public interest. By the way, we didn't invite tonight's winners, as we assumed they wouldn't show up anyway. But we'll be sure to mail them their awards, along with the kind words that follow. And in case you haven't seen the Crappie Award, here it is. Very fitting, don't you think? So our first winner tonight is Encana Corporation. Encana is one of Canada's largest oil and gas companies and has an annual revenue of close to $7 billion. We have chosen Encana because of its widespread use of fracking in northeastern BC. As we will see tonight, and as we first learned by watching the documentary Gasland a few weeks back, Encana is a key player in the booming fracking industry in the US and Canada. Fracking is clearly a dangerous technology for extracting natural gas, but Encana seems unconcerned with the dangers that fracking poses to human health and the environment. One of the biggest dangers of fracking is the contamination of ground and surface water with toxic and cancer-causing fracking fluids. Although the exact nature of fracking fluids is not known because their composition is closely guarded as a trade secret, in a 2004 study, the Environmental Protection Agency found biocides and lubricants that, quote, can cause kidney, liver, heart, blood, and brain damage through prolonged or repeated exposure. Another big concern is the migration of methane gas or other gases into people's wells, which has resulted in undrinkable water that catches fire. In the film Gasland, we saw several dramatic examples of this. And in Alberta, where fracking of coal bed methane natural gas deposits has been common practice for several years, there have been similar cases in which landowners can literally light their well water on fire. The Pembina Institute notes that in some Alberta communities, oil and gas companies are therefore now providing water to residents. Fracking can also have a massive impact on ecosystems. When forests are clear-cut to make way for access roads and gas plants, and pits are dug to extract materials for road building or to hold contaminated water, huge areas of land are affected, and animal habitat is fragmented and endangered. Moreover, the cumulative impacts of fracking operations have largely been ignored. Despite the documented dangers of fracking, Encana spokespeople have contended that environmentalists have been spreading misinformation about fracking and creating a climate of fear around hydraulic fracturing fluids. In our opinion, Encana's blatant disregard for the dangers of fracking is socially and environmentally irresponsible. For their irresponsible and unethical disregard of fracking's impact on human health and the environment, we present Encana with a Crappie Award. Shame on you, Encana. And the second winner of a Crappie Award is, wait for it, the BC Liberal government. The Liberal government has done so much to earn this award, it's difficult to know where to start. Firstly, the Liberal government has authorized fracking operations in northeastern BC on a massive scale, greenlighting hundreds of new wells in the last several years. It has courted energy companies with lax environmental standards and low royalty charges. The massive expansion of oil and gas exports by the Liberal government makes a mockery of its claims of being green. As the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives senior economist Mark Lee has pointed out, greenhouse gas emissions from BC's exported fossil fuels are more than double those from the combustion of fossil fuels by households and businesses within BC. Also, BC's fossil fuel reserves represent more than 3 years of global CO2 emissions. So the Liberal government's aggressive expansion of oil and gas production is set to drastically increase the province's greenhouse gas emissions. No amount of greenwashing about BC being a leader on climate action can obscure this fact. Secondly, the BC Liberal government's relationship with Encana and the oil and gas industry is scandalous. BC Premier Christy Clark has appointed former Encana CEO Gwyn Morgan as head of her transition team. This move, combined with the almost non-existent regulation of the oil and gas industry in BC, raises serious questions. How can our government have such a cozy relationship with an industry it is meant to regulate in the public interest? Can we expect even further expansion of the oil and gas industry and even weaker regulations? Thirdly, the Liberal government's unconditional support of the Canada-European Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, also known as CETA, shows that once again its blind devotion to right-wing economic dogma trumps the interests of ordinary British Columbians. CETA poses many risks and offers few rewards to Canadians and would open up Canada's water to privatization. But as most of us know, privatization of everything, even a thing as essential to life as water, seems to be the goal of the Liberal government. And that brings us to the BC Liberal government's greatest misdeed, their proposed new Water Act. The Water Act is the law that governs water rights in BC. The Liberal government has proposed to modernize the Water Act, but hidden in the fine print of this proposed modernization are a number of crucial changes that threaten to make it easier to privatize and deregulate water rights. These proposed measures also downgrade protections for environmental flows from regulations to simply guidelines. The upshot of all this is a new Water Act that will privilege corporations, including European and US ones, while undermining public control of water use and weakening environmental protections. As Randy Christensen, a lawyer at EcoJustice, wrote in a recent column, quote, "If this proposal goes forward, you can pretty much write off any chance of ever meaningfully recognizing a human right to water or a public trust over water." And so, for those of us who believe in the concept of the public good, that is, a shared common interest of all citizens that goes beyond individual self-interest, and who believe in the idea of the commons, that certain natural resources, such as water, belong to the earth, its creatures, and all humans, can there be a more anti-social or undemocratic entity than the BC Liberal government? For this and all the reasons cited previously, I hereby present tonight's second Crappie Award to the BC Liberal government. That concludes the awards portion of the program. Thank you very much.